wife, mom, teacher, and, in the eyes of the government, a business owner.
I've never owned a business before.
Okay, well, then why is she now responsible for paying down a $45,000 COVID loan that she didn't even take out?
Why is that okay that that falls on me?
They had figured out the system.
And the government has quite the excuse for why it's taking so long to fix the problem.
It's kind of funny.
My take on Commissioner Hardesty's A-Lene 911 call inspired some of your own. Takes, not emergency calls. And we mark two major birthdays, someone who helped shape Portland's nightlife, and another that ended it as we know it. Here's the story.
And I'm Dan Haggerty. Hi, welcome to The Story. Reach out, tell me what's on your mind. Email works, Facebook works, Instagram works, email works. I said that already. Hashtag HeyDan works on Twitter. You can try that. We always have the ways often through the show, we have the ways, see them at the bottom of your screen. Those are all the ways that you can kind of reach out to us. Ask us a question. We answer questions every single night. And at the end of the show, I like to read a couple of comments, so stay tuned for that. Now, when the show opened, I mentioned that there are two big birthdays this week. One was actually last night. That was Portland's iconic drag queen, Darcelle, turned 90 years old, further cementing her status as the world's oldest working drag queen. And I'm not just making that up. I mean, that's coming from the Guinness Book of World Records. So congratulations and happy birthday to Darcelle. A little later in the show, we're going to take a dive into the KGW vault and help celebrate properly. But I want to talk a little bit more about the second birthday that I mentioned. This one is not a joyous one at all. It's actually about as grim as it gets. And it is the reason Darcelle is probably not going to be able to throw the birthday bash that she deserves. See, today marks 1 year since the first recorded case of COVID-19 hit China, according to an unpublicized report from the Chinese government. November 17th, 2019, a 55-year-old Chinese citizen in the Hubei province, widely believed to be patient zero. It just sinks in when you think of it that way. I mean, it's been a year since this whole drama kind of began. How much things have changed. We're starting to work here at The Story on our holiday special, so we've been kind of going through a bunch of old episodes of the show, and I found a moment from February 26th that I really think is worth revisiting. We're going to start tonight with a conversation I know a lot of you have been having around the house and with your friends. The news has been all over it. It is coronavirus. You just saw a bunch of coverage about this on Nightly News. A lot of people are afraid right now. I get that. But we want to focus on one specific fact, that there are no confirmed coronavirus cases in Oregon right now. Things have changed, haven't they? And if you need any more evidence of just how much they've changed, listen to a few minutes later in that segment. Now, keep in mind, this was way back in February. It's a chart that shows what facial hair is safe to have if you're wearing a face mask or respirator to protect yourself. Masks don't really do much to protect you anyway, so wash your hands. And if you have one of those villain stashes, just try not to twirl it. What I say about masks? Now look, first of all, I couldn't grow a villain stash if I wanted to, but I bet if I went on TV now and said that today, a lot of people would be calling me a villain, and they'd be right, all right? Fortunately, we're a lot smarter than we were back in February when it comes to this virus and how it's spread and how we can protect people and big groups of people. Look, remember, health officials were at the time going back and forth with their recommendations on masks, but they've been pretty solidly in place for a while now. We know that masks are extremely effective at preventing the spread of COVID-19, and hand washing is obviously still a must. So it is astounding to me that there are people in power in our community who apparently haven't learned at the same rate as the rest of us have here. Now, we told you yesterday about Tootie Smith, the future chair of the Clackamas Board of County Commissioners, who's planning a big old Thanksgiving bash, inviting everybody over, in direct violation with Governor Brown's 2-week statewide freeze that starts tomorrow. Now, I don't think that many people, statewide really knew who Tootie was before yesterday, but I have a feeling that has changed this morning.
Freezes, which some have openly defied. One local Oregon commissioner posting, "My family will celebrate Thanksgiving with as many family and friends as I can find. Governor Brown is wrong to order otherwise." That declaration leveled against a portrait of pain.
There you see it. Tootie's now Today Show famous. We still haven't heard back from her, by the way, because I have a lot of questions that I want to ask her. Questions I was hoping that she might be asked tonight on Fox News, where Tootie appeared on Tucker Carlson's Opinion Show. Tucker didn't ask any of the types of questions I typically would have asked, but Tootie Smith did have a lot to say about the governor's order.
We have been browbeat over the head with wearing masks in public, which I do, by the way, with social distancing, to stay home if you're sick, be clean. I think our people have the intelligence, the education, and the independence to make their own decisions. We are adults. We do not need to be treated as second-rate slaves in our own homes.
Look, like them or not, the governor's order, they do come with enforcement this time around. At least she says so. She says civil citations could cost $500. A criminal charge could mean 30 days in jail or even a fine of up to $1,250. So Tootie Smith is far from, by the way, the only person flouting these COVID safety guidelines. She's really not even the only person in Clackamas County. There's this naturopathic, how do you say that? Naturopathic, you get it. Anyway, this is the sign she puts up. Our name's Dr. Erin Walker. It's a billboard on the road saying cloth masks don't stop viruses. Maybe she put it up in February, back when I was talking about masks too. Probably not. See, of course, that statement there really oversimplifies the point to a level of confusion. See, masks, again, have proven to dramatically reduce the spread of the virus. They do stop large droplets entirely. They reduce the distance that smaller ones can travel. I thought this was pretty common knowledge at this point. Apparently not. See, the only thing that will stop the virus entirely will be a vaccine. And if people keep taking vaguely worded health advice from a roadside billboard, I really hope that we approve one fast. Now, in the meantime, wear a mask. Follow the restrictions that go into effect tomorrow in Oregon and the ones that went into place last night in Washington. Now, look, just because I say all that doesn't mean that I stop doing my job as a professional question asker. I mean, one of the big restrictions that people seem to be honing in on here is not being able to dine in at restaurants or drink inside bars. And for good reason, because that's been a huge hit to our economy once. It's about to be again, and people are losing their livelihoods. But we also know that doctors are seeing most of these cases of COVID-19 spread during social gatherings at people's homes, hence all the talk about Thanksgiving, but not really at restaurants. So by that logic, it kind of makes sense to limit the number of people that you can have over, but why close restaurants, especially considering the devastating impact it's having on our economy? I had a chance to ask that question to Dr. Paul Cieslak at the Oregon Health Authority. Here's what he said.
Why were restaurants closed and other places not?
Right. Again, that's a reasonable question. And I will say that we don't have great data in Oregon on just where people are getting infected. The fact that a certain percentage of people say that they haven't been exposed to, haven't been outdoors, haven't been away from the family much, makes us infer that a lot of the transmission is going on in households. That said, we know that large aggregations of people crowded in indoor spaces is the way to facilitate transmission of this virus. And there are compelling data from other states and nationally that have suggested that restaurants in particular are a problem. And so when we think about, what actions can the state take to reduce transmission, restaurants, bars, places like that rise to the top of the list.
So basically, it comes down to this. It's a lot harder to control people's behavior in their homes. It's kind of down to the honor system, really, but not in the case of restaurants, which they can actually go in and change things around because they have state licenses. He also had this interesting reason for Oregon's poor testing rate compared to other states.
We were kind of low priority for the federal government to get testing supplies because we've been so successful or lucky in terms of our disease rates. So we've had lower disease rates than most of the country, and so we were not first in line to get a lot of testing supplies. One thing that should reassure Oregonians about the testing, though, is that when you look at what percent of Oregonians are positive on their tests, we've had lower percentages than most of the country, which means that we're testing just as many as or more people in order to find one case of disease in Oregon as they are in other places.
But if our success as a community kind of combating this virus compared to other states has put us lower on the government's priority list, the federal government, when it comes to testing, will that also put us lower on the priority list when it comes to widespread vaccination?
I don't think so. I think the vaccine is pretty much being distributed on a per capita level, but we don't know the exact numbers of vaccine that we're going to get yet.
All right, so once again, Oregon's 2-week statewide freeze goes into effect tomorrow. That means no more than 6 people in your home, and not for more than 2 different households. No eating at restaurants or drinking at bars, no working out at gyms. For the rest of the restrictions, and there are more, you can check them out at kgw.com. There are quite a few of them. Now remember, for Multnomah County, it is 4 weeks, not just 2, and that's going to seem like a really long time, but now, think of it this way. It's also the amount of time that we have to wait for a vaccine to start being administered at, the kind of the earliest goalpost that we can see. I mean, it's probably going to take longer, most likely. Definitely longer for some of us who aren't in those high-risk categories. But we are at the point in this fight against COVID that we are having realistic and optimistic discussions about vaccines, and ones that have proven so far to be pretty good with 90% effectiveness. I would say that's progress, and it's worth waiting a month at this point in the safety of your home, even over the holidays. All right, let's get into the big story tonight, which is still about COVID, but kind of in a different way. See, the federal government tried to help small businesses early on. They had loans that they were giving them to try and make ends meet. They were called those SBA loans, and the government handed out billions of dollars worth to struggling businesses. See, the problem is, though, Kyle Aboshi found out they also handed out those billions of dollars to liars, and then charged innocent people with paying them back.
Mom, can I ride my bike? Go ahead.
Alyssa Parks does a lot. She's a wife, a busy mom with 3 cute little kids, and a teacher homeschooling during COVID. But one thing she's not is a grocery store owner, even though the U.S. government thinks so.
I've never owned a business before. I've never been part of any sort of small business, and I've never applied for any sort of business loan.
In September, the Salem woman got a letter from the Small Business Administration alerting her Alyssa could soon start making payment on her nearly $45,000 COVID disaster loan, which she never applied for.
Who hands out $45,000? Honestly, is that just pennies and nickels and dimes to the government?
Alyssa would later learn that fraudsters had used her name and home address to submit a bogus application to the SBA, claiming she owned a grocery store that needed critical disaster relief.
This doesn't seem right to me that it was so simple for them to do this.
Yeah. Now, Alyssa, like countless other Americans, finds herself saddled with bogus debts after the government handed out potentially billions of dollars in fraudulent COVID relief.
If this loan starts coming due, I'm either going to have to pay on it or let it hit my credit, and I'm struggling with that. Why is that okay that that falls on me?
Yeah. So how did this happen? To understand, we've got to go back to the earliest stages of the pandemic, last spring, when the U.S. government scrambled to help businesses survive.
Our hearts go out to those affected by this terrible virus.
To get money out quickly, the SBA loosened its normal fraud safeguards. All it took to get a COVID-19 economic injury disaster loan was an online application. The fraudsters caught on fast, sharing tips like this tutorial on YouTube showing how to steal from the disaster loan program. Inside the government agency, loan officers grew accustomed to seeing bogus applications.
One single loan officer, I would report a dozen, maybe out of 80 applications a day as suspected fraud.
Nicholas Croce worked remotely as an SBA loan officer for about 7 weeks.
I understand that the government wanted to get this money out as quickly as possible, but it also went out to a lot of people who shouldn't have gotten it.
Croce said fraudsters used bogus email accounts, burner phone numbers, and relied on banks that typically don't share information with others.
The scammers that were submitting a dozen applications into my queue every day, they knew exactly these kinds of things. And they had figured out the system, right? Faster than I think the SBA could put in measures to combat it.
In a report last month, the agency's inspector general found the government had approved billions of dollars in potentially fraudulent loans after the SBA lowered the guardrails or relaxed internal controls, which significantly increased the risk of program fraud. Alyssa says the red flags should have been obvious on her application. The money was transferred to a bank with no branches in Oregon, and the fraudsters used her home address as the business location.
And apparently my house is a grocery store. I live in a neighborhood across the street from a elementary school, so it seems like a simple Google search could have told you that that was not accurate.
In response, an agency spokesperson wrote, the SBA works diligently to mitigate fraudulent use of its programs and services. And if fraud is suspected, it should be reported, which Alyssa has done repeatedly with little help from the SBA.
I can't get any answers out of anybody. They just keep saying you have to wait for our fraud department to call you. And when I ask them how long that's going to take, it's kind of funny, their response, I don't know, because there's just so much fraud going on.
With 3 kids and a busy house, Alyssa already has plenty going on. On top of that, she's now stuck trying to clean up the government's mess and restore her family's financial record.
Okay, Kyle Aboshi joining me now. Kyle, you said it so many times in the story there, billions of dollars of money stolen in these fraudulent schemes. Is anyone going to be held accountable? Is anyone getting caught? What happens next?
A great question. The SBA, Small Business Administration, said it's referred about 80,000 loans for criminal investigation, but security experts theorize, listen, many of these cases originated overseas by foreign-based scammers, so the odds of them being behind bars, it's pretty slim.
Man, frustrating. I imagine that they have kind of sealed up these gaps that gave these scammers the opportunity to get in there in the first place.
Right, they did. They eventually tightened some of the fraud controls, but it really came too late. Many legitimate applicants, they were denied grants because the money, it was all gone by then.
Oh man, insult to injury. How many victims are we talking about here? You keep throwing these really big numbers out. How big is the number of victims?
And that's really tough to say. I mean, it could be tens of thousands, maybe more than that. The SBA Inspector General hotline had more than 40,000 complaints through August. That was just through August about COVID response. And actually, since I started working on this story, another victim, a man in Lake Oswego, he came forward. Same thing. Fraudsters took out a big loan, about $50,000 in his name. He's now trying to clean up the mess as well.
Oh, boy. All right. Kyle Aboshi, thank you.
When the story continues, we enter day 2 of Joanne Hardesty 911 coverage because your emails just keep coming, so I'll respond to a few more of them. And we're going to take a sequin-covered jaunt into the KGW vault for a very special birthday celebration.
The whole thing, this whole process only takes me about 10, 15 minutes.
No business like show business.
Welcome back. Last night was a big day for viewer feedback. If you want to add to the mail pile, you can see how on your screen. Pick up your phone, tweet us using the hashtag HeyDan, or email this story at kgw.com. And we had a lot to sort through, really, after my take last night on Joanne Hardesty's 911 call from a Lyft coming home from the A Casino. A lot of you have been writing in and wanting my take, so I gave it last night during the show. Here it is. She was afraid of being left alone. Now, I don't know what it's like to be a woman or a black woman or a black person, but I have read the emails that come in about her to this show, and some of them use disgusting language and leave an impression of real, legitimate hate. And some of those emails actually CC her on them, so I know she sees them. And trust me, you have no idea what it's like to be Joanne Hardesty, and neither do I. She's a divisive figure. She says things that make headlines. She is not a fan of the police. But we live in a country where you can criticize law enforcement and still rely on them. And I disagree with anyone who says otherwise. All right, that's kind of the gist. All right, you get the point, but there's more to it. If you want to watch the whole thing, it's at the KGW YouTube channel right now. You can see there, because I also criticized her. If you're wondering, the 911 call to begin with was really petty. And, honestly, now is not the time to compromise COVID safety with your personal comfort, especially when you are an elected official. But ultimately, I did give her the benefit of the doubt when it came to feeling unsafe and calling 911. And naturally, a lot of you had something to say about that. So I wanted to read some of your messages here tonight, starting with Jan Tate from West Lynn, who emailed, after hearing you give your opinion on Joanne Hardesty's Lyft story, I reconsidered my opinion of how she handled her ride and decided to cut her some slack. I'm a woman, and I would be concerned about being dropped off late at night as well. Well, I'd never put myself in that situation to begin with. Thanks for how you show the pros and cons of a situation. There are always at least two sides. And Jan, thanks for weighing in. Again, it's never really my intention to convince anybody to cut her some slack, or really to convince anybody of anything when I just give my opinion. We all have our opinions, and just like you said there, people have different opinions. There are different sides to a story, sometimes even more. Then Abby emailed into us and said, as a woman, I totally understand how her not wanting to be let out of the car alone. However, the incident stemmed from a regulation the driver was obligated to adhere to for his safety and the safety of his passengers. I think it is more important than ever before that our leaders lead by example. She was cold, uncomfortable, but she was alive. I couldn't agree with you more on that one, Abby. I even said pretty much the same thing last night when I was giving my kind of commentary on it. The customer isn't always right, even when she has a vote on city council. The driver was doing his job by trying to keep both of them safe. And finally, Janet Germer sent this to me, a DM on Twitter. I am sorry, Dan. I do not agree with you that Joanne Hardesty is not a hypocrite. She most definitely is. She wants to defund the police, yet she calls them for assistance. What a crock. She's a piece of work. See, first, you don't need to apologize for your opinion, okay? Second, I have a different opinion, which I stated at the end of the show last night. We live in a country where we have the freedom to criticize the police and to rely on them. That's my take. We go down a dangerous path, I think, when we tell someone that they're not allowed to call 911 just because they have been critical of the people who they send to help. Again, just my opinion. I'm really happy, though, and I typically don't read a bunch of comments in this fashion. We're usually answering questions, but I am really happy about the thoughtful conversation after our segment that happened online and through emails, especially by the folks who disagreed with my take, and that's what this is all about. If you want to keep the conversation going, here's how. Use the hashtag HeyDan or email the story at kgw.com. Now, I wanted to take a few minutes and celebrate a Portland icon. Darcel, the world's oldest drag queen, turned 90 years old yesterday. So we dug into the KGW vault to take a look back at her amazing career.
The whole thing, this whole process only takes me about 10, 15 minutes. These eyebrows were a trademark that I started a few years ago. And now, and I'm the only one that I know of that uses them. They asked Darcel, what are you going to wear for Halloween? And I always tell them a three-piece business suit, you know, because I get to do this all year long.
Everything about it is appealing. Everything the traffic will allow.
This is a milestone for Walter Cole. It's his 20th anniversary of dressing up as Darcel at his Northwest Portland nightclub.
Roxy and Tina have been with me we started together 20 years ago. So that's three of us. Lindsay is the new one, right next to me over here.
Hi.
And Laurel's been, what, 10 years now? 11th year.
Oh my goodness.
So we do get along. There.
Where did those come from? People are always asking.
See, and there it is, finished. One more time. Herb, why don't you bring my jewelry over and my wig? It is a absolute dedicated craft, because when 8:30 arrives, you're ready.
It's showtime. You can do this for 20 years. And before that curtain comes up, your nerves are just as tight as if it was the first night you ever worked. It's an amazing thing with performers. I suppose when the butterflies stop, the adrenaline isn't correct. You know what I don't have? I don't have my boobs. I've got an...
That night you opened, and there you are.
Very much. Listen, if we haven't met, the name's Darcel, hair by Jacuzzi, face by Max Factor, the body by Sarah Lee.
After 10,000 shows over 2 decades in costume and face paint, Darcel says he's headed for 20 more years, even if they have to help him into his pantyhose to get him on stage.
Let's go on with the show.
Ann Jagger, News 8.
All right, hey, if we didn't get around to your comment, there's still time, all right? If you didn't send it yet, send it in. I'm going to read a few after the break, maybe respond to a few of them. Look at your screen, see all the ways to contact us. That hashtag HeyDan works pretty well. You can also email the story at kgw.com. I'm going to find a few right now, and I'll see you when we finish the story next. Naturopathic. Oh, hi. I stumbled over the word naturopathic earlier in the show. I stumble over easier words as well, but Sydney Casper wrote it and said, "It occurred to me that you tripped over that word and that you handled it in an excellent way," which I kind of just pushed right through, okay, but I didn't let it stumble me up. She said she works with kids all the time that kind of die inside a little bit with every time they make a mistake if they're speaking publicly. You know, practice makes perfect, I think, even when it comes to mistakes. Kelly Ripley Feller said, "Seriously, you don't know how to pronounce naturopathic telling?" I don't know if that means it's telling about me or if you're going to tell on me, but you should hear me try to pronounce compartmentalize and what's my other one? Colloquial. Can't do it. It's just not possible for me to do it. I've tried a million times and I can't. No offense. That's the story. See you tomorrow.